Marina Davis is with CBiz, and she's been amazing over the past almost 2 years now, doing workshops for us and generally being a real supporter of Dress for Success. So I'm excited to have her here, and I am going to not take up any more time and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Liz, thank you so much. And I am so excited to be here with you. And boy, you have had a day. I have seen your schedule, and you have definitely had a day. And I'm so excited to have the chance to speak to you about this topic, your moment of Zen, and to take care of you. So I've got a question for you. If you think back for the past 12 months, have you felt tired, overwhelmed, maybe burnt out, unhappy at certain points, maybe frustrated, pessimistic, worried, maybe at times felt a little alone, or maybe even stressed? Does this resonate with you? And maybe why have you felt this way? I mean, that may be kind of a silly question when you think about it. It could be any one of these things, or maybe a pandemic, maybe so many other demands that have been just placed upon you. And so the list goes on of why you could be feeling those things. And the question comes, what about you? What about you? And it's time. And it's time for us, and that's what I've been asked to come here to speak about. To close off today, to focus on, yes, the most important topic, which is you. So rightfully, normally I dread speaking at the end, but for something like today, this is exactly where I want to speak with you and what I want to speak with you about. Before I dive into our topic, I think it's important that I introduce myself. So that's my name and that's my title, and I work at CBiz, who has been a very staunch supporter of Dress for Success. My background is I've worked in North America and in Europe with Hyatt Hotels and a company called ADP. And then, yes, I did my own consulting. And at the same time, I actually was a professor at Northwestern University teaching those topics for 10 years or so. But this is where I am right now, and that last bullet I am so proud of. As Liz alluded to, CBiz has been such a supporter of Dress for Success. And together with Dress for Success, we have founded the Dress for Success Leadership University, which has been running for almost, a year and a half now. So, but that's it. Enough of that. I love talking about myself, but this isn't about me. This is about you. And it's about your moment of Zen. And I want to define what Zen is. Now, so I did some research to look at all of these different definitions of Zen. And I like this one the best. And it's not even the full definition, but I thought this was a really good definition for our purposes today. A state of calm attentiveness. A state of calm attentiveness. Even when you hear that, doesn't that make you just want to take a deep breath? And so a state of calm attentiveness is potentially what you need. That calmness, but also being able to focus. And with all of the demands that are placed upon you, with all of those that you serve and all of those that you help, sometimes having that state of calm attentiveness can be very difficult. I've heard enough stories to know that. And so for our 45 minutes, we are going to be focusing on your inner Zen, which will obviously then impact your outer Zen, that calm attentiveness. And so what I'm going to be sharing with you, you're going to get a handout afterwards. So you don't even have to think about taking notes. It's going to come to you. But we are going to focus, believe it or not, on just some top tips on how to cover these inner points of how to increase your inner Zen, which will obviously impact your outer state of calm attentiveness. So we're going to cover all of this in 45 minutes. I do not promise that we're going to have time to spare. But when you take a look at this list, I'm going to ask you, do you need some of these things? Now, if you don't, well, come on now. Who doesn't need some of these? And even if some of them aren't things that you need right now, I would ask you to think of those people that you serve, the people that you work with, the communities that you're in. Are there some people that you know, professionally or personally, that could maybe use a little bit of help in one of these areas? If so, please pay attention also for them. We are going to start though with the inner Zen, and how to somehow attain some of that calm attentiveness for you. And so we'll start in probably a really good place. We're going to start with hitting some quick tips on all of these things. So let's start in a great place, at least from my perspective, which is about happiness. So a few things. I've done quite a bit of research on what different researchers talk about with regard to happiness. And yes, there is something that is called the World Happiness Report. And it's actually in its 10th year. And there's some really interesting things that they have found in studying happiness in the last 10 years, as you can imagine. First off, Finland, 5th year in a row, they've taken the #1 spot. Yeah. And something else that they have found in this research, this probably wouldn't surprise you. Worry, stress, and sadness have risen quite dramatically in these last couple years in comparison to pre-pandemic levels. There's some good news, too. Actually, quite a bit of good news. Positive emotions were identified or measured as 2 times more frequent than negative emotions. In this study, they would ask questions like, did you laugh yesterday? Did you cry yesterday? And so that was some of what they were able to identify in their research. And what they also found was that these were protectors of happiness, gratitude, feeling gratitude, grit, having connections with people, volunteering, exercising, and yes, having a pet. So, okay, that's good. That's good. But I have promised you some tips, some tools for you to use. But I thought how to increase your happiness was a good place to start when we are talking about having some inner Zen. And so, one of the best tips I found that I wanted to share with you is something called DOSE. DOSE. And what that stands for is 4 naturally occurring hormones or chemicals. And the D stands for dopamine. So dopamine is called the reward chemical. And when you have a surge or an increase in dopamine, it enables motivation. It gives you determination yes, you can accomplish those goals. Yes, you're going to focus on those needs. So dopamine is the reward chemical. O stands for oxytocin. And that's considered the love hormone. And as you see there, it gives the feeling of trust. And it motivates you to build those relationships, those friendships. And it plays a role in bonding with people. The S stands for serotonin. As you see, there's a mood stabilizer. It makes you feel seen, feel significant, And yes, it's a calm form of accepting yourself with the people around you, that you are good enough. You are definitely good enough. And then E stands for endorphins, which is the painkiller. And it releases a brief euphoria to mask any physical pain. And it's not only physical pain, but also mental pain based on anxiety, stress, just to alleviate anxiety, stress, or depression. And so dose, okay, this is great, that's helpful, but the question is how can we use that to increase our happiness? I would not leave you there. Well, we've got a list for you. And I'm going to show you this list. And like I said, you're going to get this list in a handout. But I want to point out in this list, I thought it was pretty amazing because when you start taking a close look at this list, you can see some of the things that are on this list are actually repeated. So if you potentially go for a walk, get a little bit of exercise, meditate, listen to music, create something artistic, eat something. The one I particularly like is the dark chocolate. All of those things can impact not only one of these naturally occurring happiness hormones, it can actually impact multiple ones. And so if you feel the need that you need to increase your happiness, take a look at this list and start attacking this list. You may be surprised that you will actually experience a natural increase in your happiness. So that's the first tip, but we can't stop there because I have another how-to for you, how to become more optimistic. So you're right to ask, is this actually something that you can learn? Well, actually, based on research, you can learn how to become more optimistic. So, few things though. Why would you even care about being more optimistic? Well, there's some amazing reasons. Studies have shown there are better health outcomes, better mental health, higher motivation, also longer lifespans, lower stress levels. Also, a few other things. Optimistic people become successes because they make the most of their talents. It's been shown that optimistic people persevere through challenges more than pessimistic people. And optimistic people, when under pressure, produce more. And yes, you can learn optimism. I have some of the books that I'm referring to today back here. And come to find out, you can learn it. It does take time, though. It does take time and focused effort. One thing I want to point out, learning optimism doesn't work through just unjustifiable positive feelings, saying, oh, the sun will come out tomorrow. No. Learning optimism is focused on the power of non-negative thinking, which is very different. I want to give you an example. So, and I have the reference there, a gentleman named Martin Seligman. He is the gentleman who actually did this research, almost stumbled into this the idea of learning optimism. And so I'm going to ask you right now to think of, and the method is called the ABCDE method. So we're going to practice this here. So I'm going to ask you, in the last 7 days, have you experienced any kind of adversity? So if you have a pen and paper or something, take a moment, you can write it down or just think about that, about an adversity that you've experienced. Okay. Now, when somebody experiences an adversity, for some, that can actually be the end. But for others, and hopefully for you, it's only the start. Because how do we get to that optimistic feeling? The B stands for belief. So let me give you an example. First off, here's an example of an adversity that I had noted. Somebody said to me recently, I recently started taking night classes after work. and just got my first exams back, and I didn't do nearly as well as I wanted. Okay, so that's the adversity. The next is the belief. What belief do you have based on that adversity? So think about the adversity you just thought of. Now, here, for my colleague, the belief, what she said is, what awful grades. No doubt I did the worst in the class. I just need to face the facts that I'm stupid. What was I thinking when I enrolled? It's just too late for me. Doesn't that sound familiar? And so from there, we go to the C, which is consequences. So what behaviors happened because of your belief? And so the consequence in my friend's example here is, I feel totally dejected and useless. I was embarrassed. I even gave going to school a try and decided that I should withdraw from the classes and just be happy where I am. I don't belong here. Well, you can imagine what that does. When somebody, if you stop right there, the feeling of being dejected, of pessimism, of course, comes into play. Well, Seligman suggests now this is the time. He uses the word disputation, which means really just to start arguing with yourself. Challenge your beliefs, because is it possible that's not true? So here's an example, again, from my friend. I'm blowing things out of proportion. I expect to always get 100% on exams, but I got an 89%. That's not an awful grade, but it isn't the worst, as someone sitting beside me told me he got a 74%. The reason I didn't do as well as I'd hoped is because I could not devote all of my time to studying. I have a full-time job and 3 children. From now on, I need to focus on learning how to study better and focusing on learning a new career. Okay, so then from there, the question is how does disputing or arguing with yourself and those beliefs that you had change your feeling about the situation? Back to my friend. I feel much better about myself. I'm not going to withdraw, and while I'm still concerned about the time I have to study, I know I can do it. And so what Seligman found in his studies is that right there, the beliefs is what changes us. How you interpret the situation changes everything. From you deciding I can't do this, I'm not good enough, to actually starting to question yourself. But it all starts with these beliefs. What you think when things go wrong will determine what happens next. And so what he found is if you can get into the habit of questioning your beliefs, your state of calm attentiveness and focusing on those beliefs will change the consequences and ultimately change your mind. And yes, what he showed is you can learn optimism. This isn't to teach you what to say to others. It's really learning what to say to yourself. So, okay, how to become more optimistic. Wonderful. But now let's talk about how to control worry. Yes, there are stupid questions. All of us, we have to worry, right? We have worries on our shoulders. Well, there's some tips for you here too. How to control your worry. First off, identify what is something you're worrying about. I think it would probably be silly for me to ask you, do you have a worry? So once you think about something that you're worried about, again, Seligman here gives you some suggestions. When you're worrying about something that is getting in the way of you being able to be calm, ask yourself, what evidence do you have to support whatever your belief is? What alternative? Is there another way to look at this? Is there another alternative way to look at this? What are the implications if your darkest beliefs about this are right? that that person really doesn't like you, that you aren't really doing well. Are you going to be okay? You've probably taught that you learned in the past you will be okay. And then also asking yourself, will thinking about the problem be of any use? So checking the usefulness. So this can help you handle your worries, and it can help you in the moment when you feel your worries spiraling out of control. But let's just assume you've got something really important going on. Will thinking about the problem get in the way of something you have to do? Well, there's a few other suggestions here that I have for you. You've got a presentation you have to give. You've got people you need to meet with, and you're worrying about something. Well, to help you in the moment, distract yourself. Do something physically distracting. An example is washing your hands with very cold water, holding a piece of ice. Schedule a specific time to think about what you're worrying about. Say you'll think about it at 6 p.m. for 15 minutes. And lastly, the other suggestion is to write down the thoughts as they're occurring. So, okay, good advice. But what if it's a habit? And what if you have other habits that you want to change? It's not just about worrying, it's about how to change a habit that's getting in the way of your inner Zen. Well, a few things. First off, this doesn't help very much. I've seen different studies that say it just takes quite a while to break habits. Yeah, as this neuroscientist says, it's much easier to start doing something new than to stop doing something without a replacement behavior. The question is how can you make that new habit something you want to do? Well, I've got a tip for you. So let's just say you do have, we'll choose a simple habit. Maybe you want to drink more water. Well, I'm going to share with you from a great book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, the paperclip strategy. What he says is to take 2 jars, clear jars, and have some paper clips. So I've got my 2 jars and some very big paper clips here. And he says, what do you want to do today? Well, today I want to drink more water, and I want to drink 8 glasses of water. He said to put that amount of paper clips in one of the jars and leave the other jar empty. So every time then I drink a glass of water, I move one of the paper clips, I know it's not that difficult, into the other. Keep going until that jar is full, and then I can repeat the next day. Or maybe I want to drink 9 glasses of water tomorrow. Who knows? This simple trick can help you change habits. And some of the reasons it works, and it can be any habit. If you want to respond to more emails, if you want to interact with more people in the community, if you want to read more books, this works. It helps because based on research, it reminds you to start your new behavior in that morning, and it displays your progress and it measures it through the day, which starts to then motivate you. And it can actually drive, from research, what they say, short and long-term motivation. So if you have a habit you are trying to start, I would ask you to think about this silly yet simple tip. How to manage emotions. Well, if you have some emotions that are really kind of getting in the way of your calmness, well, you want to try to figure out a way to make your brain work differently. And so I'd like you to think of a time recently that you had to control your emotions. Got it? Okay, so how to manage your emotions. Now, this is on some other research from a great book called Influencer. And what this author says is that this is about you managing your emotions, not your emotions managing you. And so there's 4 suggestions. One is to just distance yourself from it. Just label it. and say, okay, I'm angry. Marina was late. So now you have just labeled it and you just put it over there. That's one suggestion. Another is to debate. Debate with yourself. Give it a compete. Maybe I need to practice patience. I know Marina was late, but maybe it's time for me to start practicing some patience instead of getting angry right away. Distracting. Get up and get yourself a drink of water. Think of something completely different. What you're going to have for dinner that night. Or delay. Very similar to worry. Schedule when you're going to think about this and get angry about it. Even waiting 15 minutes can start to diffuse the situation for you. And here's just a funny one. Just in case, it's funny, but it's also very researched. Just in case you know somebody that really becomes a hothead, well, research has found ways to help them is to practice self-control. One thing they did in the research was they just had people who struggled with this use their opposite hand with a mouse for a week or two, or do simple math equations, and that calmed them down. But if that doesn't work, a little bit of sugar went a long way, and that helped them as well. So just in case you have a challenge with this or someone else, very research-based, consider it. And remember, the chocolate helps with some of those naturally occurring hormones too. Now let's talk about how to listen well. There's a lot of words that are put at us in the course of a 24-hour period, and we don't remember that much. But listening is one of the foundational skills for building relationships. And we can think 4 times as fast as people can talk. So there's a lot of white space when somebody's speaking. You're hearing me speak, but you can be thinking about so many other things at the same time because our brains are so amazing. And so, how to listen well? First off, my first question for you may seem rather basic. Do you actually have to listen? And if yes, stop. Take a breath. Get that calm attentiveness in you. Minimize distractions if possible. And then focus on that person, because really, there have been certain moments that it has been hard for me to listen to somebody. And yet, what else is more important to that person than you being with them at that moment listening? When I think of that, that helps me greatly. Tied to that, as you can imagine, how to be more kind. Some people could say this is an easy one. The tip I wanted to give you with this one is it's about the little things. And I use this example from Stephen Covey. He said, a student came up to him and said, Dr. Covey, you're an expert in human relations, but you don't even know my name. That really stopped him short. And, it's those little things. How you do anything is how you do everything. So remembering all those prior how-tos and this will help you be more kind. But when I think of just who I'm speaking to, I'm not sure if you needed to know this. I think you knew this already. And so for your inner Zen, my question for you, and I wish I had the privilege to have the chance to speak to you one-on-one, face-to-face, which do you need to focus on? Which is most important? And whatever that is, I would challenge you to practice that. Practice those tips in these next 24 hours. Because that is going to impact your outer Zen. What you show the world. That state of calm attentiveness. Well, here's some interesting information. People who felt they lost connectedness, not surprising, reported a decrease in happiness. The research said keys to happiness was the trust, support, inclusivity, belonging. All of that remained unchanged. Interestingly, yes, pro-social behavior increased 25% in every global region, as you see, defined by those three things, so important to dress for success: volunteering, donating, and helping strangers. In other words, obviously, we need each other. And so we are going to focus on these four things. The inner Zen, what we talked about, will obviously impact here. So take a look at these things and consider, what do you need to work on? So how to keep relationships positive? Well, this was interesting research, at least to me. It was focused mostly on marriages, but I had the feeling there's a little bit of carryover to all relationships. This research found that for every negative interaction during a conflict, 5 or more positive interactions were needed to keep the relationship positive. So positive interactions included being interested in the person, demonstrating that they matter, being intentional about your appreciation of them, finding opportunities to agree, to empathize, and to apologize. A negative interaction has so much power and so much weight on us that it takes five positive interactions to outweigh that negative one. So obviously it's best, if possible, to avoid it, but if not, please realize how to keep those relationships positive is having those positive interactions, 5 or more. And when you think about what we talked about in our inner Zen section, it will help. It will help with this. How to build trust, tied to that, of course. Well, it's going back to our World Happiness Report. Trust and the ability to count on others are major supports to life evaluations, especially in the face of crises. To feel that your lost wallet would be returned if found by a police officer, by a neighbor, or a stranger is estimated to be more important for happiness than income, unemployment, and major health risks. Amazing, right? So how to build trust? Keep your promises. And when you can't, explain why. In other words, do what you say you're going to do. We've all experienced people who do not keep their promises, and it definitely harms trust. So as I have a quote there from Brene Brown: trust is not built in big sweeping moments, it's built in tiny moments every day. Okay. And then how to be more liked. Well, isn't this something? Yeah, not everybody has to like me. I can't, right? Isn't that the truth? So, seemingly, interestingly, this is a simple one as well. Think about it. If every time you meet someone and you make them feel good about themselves, wouldn't they seek you out in every opportunity possible to have that same feeling? Because you're making them feel good about themselves. So how do you do that? Well, we start liking people who kind of like us. So you can start complimenting them. So that's level 1. I wrote an example here. I've noticed how hard you've been working on the project. I appreciate it. And then level 2 is figuring out a way to have them compliment themselves. How would you do this? So yeah, I've noticed how hard you've been working on the project, and I really appreciate it. And then it takes a lot of dedication and commitment to be successful. A lot of long hours, I'm sure. How are they going to respond? They're going to respond that you're right. It has been a lot of hard work. I'm really proud, though, of what I've accomplished. In other words, not only have you complimented them, but now they're complimenting themselves. And they now are finding that they like you. But I would only ask you to be authentic with your compliments, of course. Just in the off chance that you need to apologize. How to apologize well. I think this is an easy one. Saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was wrong. Or I'm sorry I did this and I was wrong. And then you live your life accordingly, showing that you aren't going to just do that thing again. You are going to live showing that, you won't do that again, at least not on purpose, because having their trust matters to you. And so when you think of these outer Zen how-tos, what do you need to focus on? Is there something here that maybe in the next 24 hours you need to focus on? Please consider it. Because yes, your inner Zen will definitely feed into these items to actually increase that calm state of attentiveness to the outer world. So your to-do list, I've got these listed here. And I hate to give you a to-do list, but there's one more. There's one more to do, one more how-to. And especially when I think about how busy you are, it's rude of me to tell you there's another how-to, but I do have one more for you. Remember in that World Happiness Report, one of the things that they found that made people increase in their happiness is how to increase your gratitude or having an increase in their gratitude. So I wanted to share with you ways that have been found to help people increase their gratitude. So for your inner Zen, it's considering these things. This is a good start. And this will be in the handout you receive. But your outer gratitude is telling somebody, thank you for making a difference for me. This is what you did. And this is why it was so important to me. But I also have one other thing I'd like to show you, and it's a gratitude tool. It's a video. So if we could load that up, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
What makes you happy? Having fun? Hanging out with friends? Delicious food? Making money? Well, consider this. Psychologists have scientifically proven that one of the greatest contributing factors to overall happiness in your life is how much gratitude you show. Yeah? Think about that. Go ahead and marinate on it for a second. You can thank me later if you want. It'll make you feel better according to this study. You go ahead and click on it and read it if you want. Or you can keep watching because we read it and we thought it might be fun to test out for ourselves. We gathered a selection of volunteers to act as our subjects. First, we gave them a test. They didn't know what we were looking for, but it gave us a pretty good idea of their current level of happiness. We asked them to close their eyes and think of somebody who was really influential in their life, somebody who did something really amazing or important for them. We had them write down as much as they could about why this person was so important. Now, a lot of them thought at this point the experiment was over, until we really put them on the spot and tried to get them to call that person and read what they wrote about them. Thank you, Jessica. We're going to have you call your mother. So who is that right person for you?
Person is my sister, Erica.
We're going to give Erica a call.
Okay.
Who'd you end up picking?
Friend of mine, Craig Ains. Her name is Dora.
My college accounting instructor.
Really? Is this somebody you're still in touch with today?
No, I'm assuming that he's passed on.
That's a
To
shame.
the great beyond.
You up for it?
Yes.
What would you say if we called up Dora?
Oh, we can try, but she lives in Britain.
In Britain?
I don't know a number by heart, dude. This is awful.
That's fine. I don't know my mom's number by heart.
If it's true that those who are going on are looking down on us, maybe you read my chicken scratch.
Hey, sweetheart.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
You got a second? Where you at, in the hotel?
I am. I'm in the hotel. You scared me when you asked if I had a second or something's wrong.
No, I'm on like this little TV show, and they told me to talk about the person that influenced me the most, and I picked you, and they're making me call you. They're making me call you.
Oh, wonderful.
Hi, you've reached Craig. I'm not here right now.
At the tone, please record your message.
Oh, come on.
Hello?
Hi,
Hi.
Erica. It's me.
All right, so I got to read you this paragraph. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead,
All right.
sweetheart.
All right. The person that influenced me the most would be my mother, Marlo Dawson. She is a single mother of 2. She is a very hard worker and dedicated to her family.
Hey Craig, this is Loie. This is going to be a funny little voicemail, so I hope you enjoy it. I'm so sorry for calling you at 4 o'clock in the morning. I have to read this to you, okay? And you can't say anything, or I don't know. You can respond, but I probably will just keep going. Okay?
Is everything okay?
Yes, but I have to read this out loud to you.
The person who has had the biggest impact on my life, outside of Jesus Christ, who is responsible for my existence, was my college accounting instructor. He had a joy and enthusiasm for his job like no other teacher I have ever known.
I love her to death, and she keeps me going with positive talk. She is a woman that knows what she wants and won't give up until it is achieved.
Oh, something. I don't know what. I'm about to cry because it's so beautiful. I have to say that's just wonderful.
I first met Craig on an independent feature film set in Whitefish, Montana. I recently have been sending Craig a lot of positive thoughts as he suffered a series of health problems. Despite his medical problems, he's continued to work and take pleasure in the small things in life, like sitting quietly with his wife Janine on the porch. Erica is my older sister and my best friend. Sometimes it even feels like we are twins. She's my #1 fan and my #1 supporter. She makes me happy because despite all my mistakes and my decisions, she still loves me no matter what. Your friendship is everything. And you are one of the most important person in my life. Even when she has a kid and many children, I will love her more than her kids. Okay, maybe not. I will never forget when she flew 3,000 miles at the drop of a phone call to save me from a breakup.
I'm being blessed by having a son like you. I love you.
Bye.
Why did you do that to me?
I don't know, because they made me do it. Thank you for picking up. Bye, sweetie. And then they're like, here, you're going to write this letter. And then I wrote like this whole long-ass letter, which, I like don't write. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, guess what? Now we're going to call her. And you're going to read her this letter. And I was like, what the
Before we let them go, we gave our subjects one more happiness test. Now, we mixed up and rephrased the questions so they didn't know they were taking the same test twice. For those who took the time to actually write something down but couldn't make the phone call for whatever reason, we saw happiness increase between 2 and 4%. Good, but not exactly mind-blowing. Now, for those who actually picked up the phone and personally expressed their gratitude, we saw increases between 4 and 19%. So either way, expressing your gratitude will make you a happier person. But you want to know something really interesting? The person who experienced the biggest jump in happiness was the least happy person who walked in the door. What does that mean? That means if you're having a particularly tough time, trying this out will more likely have a greater impact on you. Trust me. I'm in a lab coat.
And so, I hope that gave you some really good ideas of that additional inner and outer way to build your Zen. And so how to move forward? Well, what are you going to do? Here are all of these options that I covered, and as you saw, gratitude bridges both. And if you use some of these how-tos or a combination, you'll see a reduction in conflict, a decrease in stress and burnout, helping you through change, focus you when you feel overwhelmed. It will help you strengthen relationships and increase your happiness, your gratitude, and your positivity. You deserve it. And so I would like to be bold and say, and give you an action plan. I would ask you to consider writing that gratitude letter. Who is that person? And call them or talk to them. You have a chance of increasing your happiness by 19% if you do that. So again, if I could be so bold to suggest that you do that relatively soon, especially when you need to increase your happiness, I would ask you to put that on your to-do list. And then start building more of those Zen moments, because you deserve it. And so I'd like to leave you with this thought. Write it on your heart that every day is the best day of the year. He is rich who owns the day, and no one owns the day who allows it to be invaded with fret and anxiety. Finish every day and be done with it. You've done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them. Just forget them as soon as you can, because tomorrow is a new day. Begin it well and serenely, with too high a spirit to be encumbered with your old nonsense. This new day is too dear, with its hopes and invitations, to waste a moment on yesterday's. And that's by Emerson. On behalf of all of my colleagues at CBiz, I want to thank you. Thank you for all of the work that you do around the world, and thank you for giving me the privilege to speak to you today. And good luck creating your moments of Zen. Thank you.